The entertainment world thrives on surprises, but every once in a while, something happens that shakes even the most unshakable fans. For years, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo have been two names that could light up any screen, create headlines, and make fans believe in magic all over again. But what no one ever saw coming was the director's confession, a moment that left the entire industry speechless and fans reeling from the revelation that some stories aren't just scripts, they're real. It all began on an ordinary evening. The media had gathered for a press event marking the anniversary of one of the most successful dramas in Chinese entertainment history. The Untamed. Cast members, crew, and industry icons were in attendance. The event was supposed to be routine, polite smiles, brief interviews, the usual red carpet glamour. But as fate would have it, that night would be anything but ordinary. The director, known for his calm demeanor and calculated words, took the stage for what everyone thought would be a short thank you speech. The lights dimmed slightly, casting a soft glow across the audience. Cameras were poised, ready to capture the moment. But instead of the typical speech about ratings, success, and teamwork, he began with a sentence that froze everyone in their seats. "I think it's time the world knows the truth," he said. His voice steady but carrying the weight of something long hidden. The audience murmured. Even the cameramen exchanged glances. Xiao Zhan, seated among his co-stars, looked up in mild surprise, while Wang Yibo, composed as always, leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing in curiosity. The director continued, his tone calm yet charged with emotion. "When I first cast Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo," he began, "I had no idea what I was stepping into. It wasn't just talent I saw. It was something magnetic, something raw and unspoken between them that the camera couldn't ignore." The crowd fell silent. You could hear the faint clicks of cameras trying to capture every expression. Xiao Zhan's eyes flickered, half amusement, half disbelief. Wang Yibo simply tilted his head, a faint smirk dancing at the corner of his lips. The director smiled knowingly. "You all thought The Untamed was fiction," he said. "But what unfolded on that set, what we captured, wasn't entirely acting." Gasps rippled through the room. Journalists began scribbling furiously, whispers turning into a low roar of curiosity. Even fans watching the live stream online were flooding the comment section with frantic questions. The director didn't stop there. He walked toward the large screen behind him, and a montage began to play, behind-the-scenes footage never seen before. Clips of Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo laughing uncontrollably between takes, quiet moments where they shared headphones, exchanged glances that lingered a little too long, and moments of raw emotion that felt too genuine to be scripted. The atmosphere changed. It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was revelation. Every smile, every stolen glance suddenly carried a new meaning. The director turned back to the audience. "What you all saw on screen was the result of something deeper," he confessed. "Their chemistry wasn't something I directed. It was something I discovered. I tried to shape it, to control it for the story, but some things can't be scripted." The audience was spellbound. Xiao Zhan sat motionless, his fingers interlaced, eyes fixed on the stage. Wang Yibo's usually composed demeanor softened. For the first time, his expression betrayed emotion, subtle but unmistakable. A reporter raised a hand timidly. "Director, are you saying there was something real between them?" The director chuckled softly, glancing toward the two stars. "I'm saying that sometimes art imitates life, and sometimes life leaks into art." The air grew heavy. Xiao Zhan exhaled, leaning back in his chair, while Wang Yibo's eyes flickered toward him. The moment was electric, thick with unspoken words. Fans online began replaying the live footage, analyzing every frame. The director continued, "There were days when I didn't have to say, 'action.' They would just start being." The connection between them carried the scene. It was like watching lightning in a bottle. He paused, his voice dropping lower. "After the final episode, I thought the magic would end there. But it didn't. Even off camera, that same unspoken bond followed them." The crowd erupted again, half disbelief, half awe. Some called it professional synergy, Others whispered about something deeper. Either way, the confession had already taken on a life of its own. Xiao Zhan finally stood up, microphone in hand. His voice was calm, but his smile betrayed both amusement and surprise. "Director, you always did have a way with words," he said lightly, drawing laughter from the crowd. But the twinkle in his eyes revealed something else. A memory, perhaps, or a truth only he and Wang Yibo understood. Wang Yibo followed, his usual coolness intact but his tone laced with quiet sincerity. "I think what he means," Yibo said slowly, "is that sometimes you meet someone who makes your work feel effortless. Someone who understands without needing to explain." Hush fell. His eyes met Xiao Zhan's for a brief second, just long enough to spark a wave of camera flashes. That single glance was worth 1,000 words. The director smiled, his confession complete. "Whatever it was," he said, "it made the Untamed what it became. The rest, I'll leave for you all to decide." As applause thundered through the hall, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stood side by side, bowing slightly toward the crowd. But as they straightened up, Yibo leaned subtly closer, whispering something that made Xiao Zhan laugh under his breath. No one caught the words, but the smile said everything. In the hours that followed, social media exploded. The director's confession trended in multiple countries. Fans flooded forums, dissecting every word, every look, every memory. Some reposted clips from the show, now analyzing them with a new perspective. Others simply celebrated the authenticity of two artists whose connection transcended fiction. Behind the glamour, away from the flashing cameras, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo reportedly shared a quiet moment backstage. The noise of the event faded into a distant hum as they stood side by side, a comfortable silence enveloping them. "You knew he'd say something like that, didn't you?" Xiao Zhan teased softly. Yibo gave a half-smile. "I guessed," he said. "But maybe it was time." Xiao Zhan laughed quietly. "Time for what?" Yibo looked at him, his eyes calm yet deep. "For people to stop pretending they didn't see what was always there." For a brief moment their world felt still. No cameras, no scripts, just the lingering bond between two souls who had built something larger than fame. That night, while the internet buzzed with theories and excitement, the director's confession had already done something greater. It reignited the love for authenticity in storytelling, reminding everyone that sometimes, the most unforgettable stories aren't written by pen and paper but by the moments that happen when no one is watching. Fans would continue to speculate, rewatch, and wonder. But one thing became clear. Whatever the director had seen between Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, it was something real enough to inspire generations, an unspoken truth that blurred the line between fiction and reality. The room was still buzzing from the director's words, the confession that no one had expected. But what most people didn't know was that his revelation was only the beginning of what truly unfolded that night. As the applause faded and cameras stopped rolling, the atmosphere backstage turned electric. Everyone, actors, producers, even assistants, whispered fragments of disbelief. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, the center of it all, found themselves caught in a moment that felt almost surreal. Xiao Zhan stood quietly near the stage curtain, his posture calm but his mind racing. He had always admired the director for his honesty, but this confession was beyond anything he could have imagined. A soft laugh escaped his lips as he shook his head slightly, brushing a hand through his dark hair. That laugh, low and disbelieving, caught Yibo's attention instantly. From across the room, Wang Yibo watched him with an expression that was unreadable. His cool, stoic demeanor couldn't mask the flicker of something deeper in his eyes. He walked over, ignoring the chaos of the crowd still surrounding the director. His steps were steady, quiet, almost deliberate. "You okay?" Yibo's voice was calm, but there was a hint of concern buried beneath his usual restraint. Xiao Zhan turned toward him, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You mean after that bombshell of a confession? I should probably be hiding." Yibo smirked, leaning against the wall beside him. "You've never been good at hiding. Not on set, not anywhere." That line made Xiao Zhan laugh again, But this time it carried warmth. Says the man who never talks but somehow ends up saying the most memorable things. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the echo of the director's words replaying in both their minds. Their chemistry wasn't something I directed, it was something I discovered. Those words carried weight, truth disguised as artistic reflection. And maybe that was the real confession, the acknowledgement of something even the camera couldn't fake. As the two stood together, a crew member called out, "Director's looking for you both." They exchanged a glance, half amusement, half dread, and made their way backstage, where the man of the hour stood surrounded by flashing lights and curious faces. When the director saw them, he smiled knowingly. "Ah, my two muses," he teased. His voice still calm but his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Director," Xiao Zhan began carefully, "you nearly caused a media storm out there." The older man chuckled, adjusting his glasses. "Nearly. My dear boy, I think I did." Wang Yibo crossed his arms, his tone light but edged with sincerity. "You really think people will understand what you meant?" The director looked between them, his expression softening. "They don't have to understand it. They just have to feel it. And what you two created, what you shared on that set, it made people feel something real. That's the rarest kind of truth in this business." Xiao Zhan fell quiet, absorbing the words. The director wasn't just speaking about acting. He was talking about that silent connection that had existed between them from the first day of filming. Memories began to flood his mind. Those late-night rehearsals where they'd laugh until dawn, the unscripted looks that somehow made every scene more believable, the quiet understanding that didn't need words. One night stood out clearly. During the filming of a particularly emotional scene, the crew had been exhausted. Everyone was tense except Yibo. He had looked over at Xiao Zhan, giving him a small nod, wordless encouragement. That one glance was all it took. The scene became one of the most unforgettable moments in the entire show. Now, standing in the aftermath of the confession, that same unspoken energy returned, an echo of something that never truly went away. The director placed a hand on Yibo's shoulder. "You've both carried this story beyond what I ever imagined. I only spoke the truth tonight because people deserve to know how real that connection was. Not to invade your lives, but to celebrate the artistry of it." Yibo nodded quietly, his gaze steady. "Maybe it was time." The director smiled faintly. "Exactly. Some truths don't need scripts. They just need the right moment to be seen." As the director moved away, the two stood in the soft backstage lighting, shadows stretching across the floor. Xiao Zhan looked over at Yibo, a smirk playing on his lips. "So, what now? We let the internet eat us alive." Yibo laughed under his breath. "Let them. We've faced worse." Their banter was light, but their eyes held something deeper. A shared understanding that this moment, this confession, had somehow changed everything again. Meanwhile, in the main hall, journalists replayed the confession clip endlessly. Online, fans were already dissecting every expression and every lingering glance from the live broadcast. The hashtags #the director's confession and #Xiao Zhan Wang YiboTruth began trending within minutes. Clips flooded the internet. Edits of the behind-the-scenes footage mixed with emotional music, slow-motion moments that captured every smile and every glance between the two. Fans weren't just watching, they were feeling. Backstage, Xiao Zhan picked up his phone and opened Yibo. The flood of notifications was endless. Messages of support, curiosity, and disbelief. He sighed softly. "Looks like we broke the internet again," he muttered. Yibo leaned closer to peek at the screen. "You mean you broke it? I just existed beside you." Xiao Zhan turned, grinning. "Please don't act innocent. You were the storm." That made Yibo laugh. A genuine low laugh that few people ever got to hear. It was one of those moments that didn't need an audience, didn't need a camera. It just existed perfectly between them. The director's confession had pulled the curtain back on something deeper than fame or performance. It revealed the beauty of an unfiltered connection between two people who didn't just act. They understood each other in ways that words couldn't explain. As they finally prepared to leave the venue, The hallway outside was quiet. Xiao Zhan stopped for a moment, glancing back toward the stage where everything had begun. "It's strange," he said softly. "We thought the story ended years ago, but somehow it keeps finding new chapters." Yibo followed his gaze, his voice calm but thoughtful. "Maybe that's because some stories aren't meant to end." They exchanged a final glance, steady, knowing, and filled with unspoken meaning, before walking side by side out into the night, where flashes of cameras and fans' cheers waited like the stars themselves. That night, the director's confession didn't just reveal a truth, it rekindled something the world had almost forgotten: the power of authenticity, the kind that can't be rehearsed or rewritten. And in that truth, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stood not as co-stars, but as living proof that some connections transcend screens, scripts, and even time itself. And so, the legend of the director's confession became more than just a headline. It became a moment fans would replay again and again, searching for the spark that made it all so unforgettable.